Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mundane Matt, and welcome back to $3 Theater. The show I keep trying to say is pretty frequent for doing movies and stuff on my channel. I am sorry for the couple week delay. I got really sick. It was hard for me to talk for a while. And then for some reason, I just got like really demotivated to do much of anything. I had to force myself even through my main videos. And I took myself away from talking about what I love, which is movies. And so I've been holding on some of this stuff for the last like week or so, trying to get myself back into the motivation to talk about it. But it wasn't until last night where I kind of hit a breaking point where I did this top 9 facts about Cloverfield video and realized that I have just got to force myself to talk about movies, because it literally is one of the things I do that I love the most. And even doing the video about Cloverfield was great, and I really want to do more things like that. So I got to force myself to do things that I enjoy, because it's so easy to get caught up in a lot of the bullshit online, especially when you do kind of news commentary coverage. And that was what happened. And so I know I kind of feel like I'm vlogging more than talking about movies, but that's essentially what went down. And I just want to be honest with you guys, because I want to build a relationship. I want you guys to come to me to talk about movies, to talk about things like this. And, you know, I'm human, and sometimes things become overwhelming. Never mind the fact that it's really dark and gloomy up here in the Northwest, and I get the seasonal affective disorder. So it kind of like kicks my ass there as well. But anyway, enough about that. I want to talk about movies, and I want to talk about a few stories today. So let's just jump right into it on this episode of $3 Theater. All right, first things first, I got to talk about it because people have been asking me to cover this for days. Ben Affleck is no longer directing the Batman at Warner Brothers. And when I first read that, my initial response was like Darth Vader at the end of Revenge of the Sith. I was, no! Because Affleck directing the Batman is like, to me, just like one of the best things that could ever fucking happen, right? It just, look, The Town and Argo are just amazing movies, and I really want to see Live by Night, even though it hasn't done as well theatrically as they would have hoped. I still think Affleck is a top tier director and a person of whom we owe a lot of respect to in that regard. But when he says here that he pulled out because he couldn't do both jobs, he couldn't be the Batman and direct the Batman in a way that would be sufficient. I can respect that. I don't necessarily like it, but I can respect it. Now, a lot of people out there have been very much speculating on what this means. My friends at Midnight's Edge say that it's entirely possible Affleck might walk away from the Batman entirely. In fact, last night on Latino Review, they did put out this wild speculation that Affleck is in the process of exiting out playing the character, and that Armie Hammer will come in to play Batman instead, right? Some people have speculated that he might play Hal Jordan, you know, in Lantern Corps, or the or Green Corps, whatever it's called. I don't really know. But he was actually tapped to play Batman in the original Justice League movie, which George Miller was set to direct back in 2007 before the writer's strike killed it. So there's that speculation as well. And a lot of people right now are wondering who's on Warner Brothers' shortlist to direct the movie. Some people have suggested that it's like Matt Reeves or Darren Aronofsky or Denis Villeneuve, if I'm saying that correctly, although he just came out today and said he's going to be directing the Dune remake for Legendary. So that's off the table for him in terms of Batman. And like David Fincher is one that's been suggested as well. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to be a relatively unknown person. And if you're thinking to yourself, that will never fucking happen, hear me out. So the movie Tombstone, right? The movie Tombstone, I don't know who directed it. I don't honestly right now can't tell you. But the movie Tombstone essentially was directed by Kurt Russell. He just didn't take up the mantle of directing it, right? He basically directed the movie, but the other guy took credit for it. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I think Affleck wants to give it all to the character. He's a card-carrying Batman fan. He wants to, make it the best that he can, but there's been lots of problems with the script. And he did say that if the script wasn't right, he wouldn't do the project. and the script apparently has been having problems. Bret Easton Ellis a while ago made the comment that Warner Brothers knows the Batman script is totally fucked, and that they have no interest in fixing it. Chris Terrio, who was a co-writer of Argo and also came in to do a lot of work on Batman v Superman and also co-wrote the Justice League script, was brought in to tackle the Batman script and apparently had trouble with that as well. And and I think that might have also led into this decision is Affleck wants to kind of maybe separate himself from a potential failure, right? Of having two flops in a row. Now, some have said that Live by Night is the reason why this decision was made. Others have said that's not true. I think that's more true than not. In Hollywood, you're only as good as your last movie. Batman v Superman did over 700, or no, like was it over 900 million worldwide or something like that? And ultimately didn't connect with the audiences in theaters, but on DVD, the movie was like #1 seller for 5 weeks, and people loved the extended cut. Fuck, that's still in my top 5 films of 2016. And so you've got that whole situation. But also Live by Night coming out being a vanity project for Affleck and then not doing as well as he wanted it to. I think that might have played into his ego, and it makes sense. Actors and directors, they throw themselves into these projects. And when they fail to connect with the audiences, especially a couple of them, it might have a long lasting effect. Look at M. Night Shyamalan. M. Night Shyamalan had like a couple of major ass flops. Right? Look at The Last Airbender. Yeah, it grossed $70 million opening weekend in July of 2010, but it was completely panned by fans and critics. And even though the movie was technically deemed, I think at the time, a success, it went on to kind of lead this couple film flop for Shyamalan. Like, what was it? After Earth was in 2013. That was a pile of goddamn garbage. And then it wasn't until The Visit in 2015 and then Split, which just came out, that have now kind of re-propelled him back up to the top in the psychological horror genre, right? So much so that he's now working on Unbreakable 2, sorry. So you got that, right? So I'm wondering if Affleck is fearing that for himself, and Affleck is going, I don't know, I had this major flop coming off of a Best Picture win. I don't know if I can do it correctly. I might just take a step back from this role. But ultimately, I think Affleck is, if he's still going to be on as producer and writer and star, he's going to basically be doing a lot of the kind of like micromanaging in terms of directing, right? And I think that might do well because he had a lot of input on Justice League, and he had a lot of input on the post-production of Justice League. And so I think Affleck is doing the right thing by maybe taking a step back, but I think also it might be as a way to protect himself from failure in case the movie does fail to connect. But let's face it. Let's just face it. As long as this movie isn't Batman and Robin, it's gonna be okay. It's going to be okay. Batman, regardless of what you think of BVS, Batman was the #1 aspect of that fucking movie, right? Batman was the shit. And we can't wait to see more of that in Justice League Part 1 and Part 2. And so I feel like Affleck is maybe at a low point right now, right? In terms of his career and maybe his confidence. But I really feel that like they should focus on the script and just get it as good as they can and then make the damn thing. Because you know that movies are an evolutionary process. They always are. So, there's a movie you write, there's the movie you shoot, there's the movie you edit. And so thinking at it right now, they at least need to have the core concept of the script ready to go. But then again, look at Iron Man. Iron Man just had like the bare bones synopsis of that was essentially the script. And the actors were able to bring it together to tell a serviceable enough movie that was entertaining as all hell to launch the MCU. And that might be what Warner Brothers needs. Warner's at this point in time, people are saying, oh, the DCEU is dead. It's done. Put a fork in it. Fuck you. No, it's not. It's nowhere near that. They've had some slip-ups, absolutely, but they are definitely on their way back up, in my opinion. The fact that Suicide Squad is nominated for an Academy Award, even though it's costume or makeup or something, is still something that they're going to hold on to. And I feel like the DCEU, the origins of it in terms of pushing out, the race to the top to be with Marvel was a bad idea. And definitely not something they should have done. But now they're trying to rectify that. They're trying to bring fun, hope, and optimism back to the DCEU, as said by The Rock. And I think that is a good way to go about it. So I want Affleck to direct this movie. It's not going to happen, but I want him to give his best performance as an actor and to bring us a kick-ass Batman movie. And I know the segment's run on for fucking ever, so I'm going to end it. But those are my thoughts on Batman, on Affleck no longer being the Batman director. All right, so jumping over into interesting but not needed sequel news. Apparently, Sylvester Stallone is coming back to play the character he played in The Escape Plan, the Schwarzenegger and Stallone team-up movie from 2013 that really did fail to connect with audiences here in the United States. It only grossed $25 million in its entire run. However, in China, it did $40 million, and that's pretty much where the second movie is going to take place. They've teamed up with a Chinese production company. They're going to be getting Chinese money, and the movie is going to be tailored to the Chinese audience, probably more than anything else. But ultimately, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this because I found Escape Plan to be relatively by the numbers. However, at the same time, it was really fun seeing Stallone and Schwarzenegger on screen together and everything else. It kind of felt like a nice dumb B action-y movie that you would find in the late 1980s and early 1990s without maybe the flair from those particular films. But ultimately, I enjoyed Escape Plan, and if they do Escape Plan 2, I'm on board to see it. I'm also, for the sake of full disclosure, a pretty big Expendables fan. So anytime Stallone is back on the screen with one of his buddies from back in the heyday of action films, the 80s, I'm definitely on board to see what they come up with, and I really want to know what happens next. Now, there's no release date on the movie, there's no production date on the movie. It's just right now it's being written by Miles Chapman, who was the screenwriter on the first movie, and he's coming back to pen the second one. Additionally, Schwarzenegger is not 100% confirmed for the sequel, but they are in talks to get him involved. And again, like, that's cool. Like, Schwarzenegger, I think, just wants to, like, make fun movies is what I feel like. The stuff he's been doing lately, ever since he stopped being governor of California, feels like he's just kind of going back to his roots and just having a good old time, with occasionally dipping his toe into the dramatic elements with Maggie, which was relatively well received, and he actually got accolades or praise, not accolades, but praise for his performance in that one. So anything with more of my two of my favorite action movie stars, even especially on screen together, is like A-okay in my book. All right, so jumping over into adaptation news, there is a book coming out here in the next couple months called The Black Hand, which is the nonfiction retelling of NYPD Lieutenant Joe Petrosino, who is basically kind of on a one-man mission to take on organized crime in like 1903 New York. And as the book's getting ready to come out, it's already been optioned, and apparently Leonardo DiCaprio is currently headlining the adaptation to star in it. In fact, this is what the official synopsis is, and I'm not going to lie, it sounds really, really, really fucking cool, and if done right, this will be good. Beginning in the summer of 1903, an insidious crime wave filled New York City and then the entire country with fear. The children of Italian immigrants were kidnapped and dozens of innocent victims were gunned down. Bombs tore apart tenement buildings, judges, senators, Rockefellers, and society matrons were threatened with gruesome deaths. The perpetrators seemed both omnipresent and invisible, their only calling card the symbol of a black hand. The crimes whipped up the slavering tabloid press and heated ethnic tensions to a boiling point. Standing between the American public and the Black Hand's lawlessness was Joseph Petrosino, dubbed the Italian Sherlock Holmes. He was famously dogged an ingenious detective and a master of disguise. As the crimes grew more bizarre and the Black Hand's activities spread far beyond New York's borders, Petrosino and the all-Italian police squad he assembled raced to capture members of the secret criminal society before the country's anti-immigrant tremors exploded into catastrophe. Petrosino's quest to root out the source of the Black Hand's power would take him all the way to Sicily, but at a terrible cost. That sounds pretty fucking cool, right? Kind of sounds like, I mean, it feels like it's almost in line with where we are maybe on a political level here in the country. Not extreme, not to that extreme, but it kind of feels like it might be very fitting of the time. But that sounds pretty fucking cool. That sounds like a good story. I want to read the book, and then I definitely want to see the movie. And you know what I'm thinking with this one? So there's no screenplay for it yet. Paramount's looking for somebody to write it. But honestly, I'm not gonna lie, this feels like something Scorsese should do, right? Because we know Scorsese and Leo DiCaprio are buddy, and I feel like this is probably one of the best things they could do together. So I'll be definitely following this as much as I can, and hopefully we'll be able to get some more information on this soon, because that sounds pretty fucking dope, and I really want to see what it almost feels like too. It's like, you know, they call him the Italian Sherlock Holmes, and he's with an all Italian police squad. It kind of feels like Sherlock Holmes, or really Elliot Ness and the Untouchables is pretty much what I'm getting. Get Brian De Palma to direct it. What has he done lately? De Palma needs a win. De Palma needs a comeback win. So Paramount Pictures, who also released the Untouchables, I believe, I could be wrong, but I think they did. You guys should go and get Brian De Palma or Martin Scorsese to make this movie, because I feel that they could bring the right amount of grittiness to this particular horrific story. All right, so jumping over into movie industry news, last week there was a big blow up talking about how Sony might sell off Sony Pictures and Columbia, right? Like because they had a $1.3 billion write-off, although that number has fluctuated. It's been like just under $1 billion, then it's over $1 billion. Either way, it's a lot of money that Sony effectively lost in 2016 from their movie division, which failed to connect in almost every way. And I feel like that also had a lot to do with how Spectre failed to connect at the tail end of 2015. That's an awesome fucking movie, but it didn't have the impact that Skyfall had a couple years before it. As a result of this, you know, people were running at speculations like Michael Linton is leaving. He's the last executive in play from the Sony hack. So now he's gone, and still Tom Rothman fucking remains. But they are definitely, you know, talking about how Ghostbusters tanked and a bunch of other Sony movies tanked, and that they just might get out of the movie industry completely. Turns out that's not the case. They are actually not going to be selling Sony Pictures at all. But I do have a feeling, though, that Sony Pictures is going to make a pivot. Sony Pictures is probably going to focus more on Sony Television, because they're the ones who actually owned Breaking Bad, and they put out a lot of quality television. So I'm thinking that might be where the pivot lies, because right now we're seeing this kind of second or third renaissance of primetime network television or streaming television. People like the long form expository content, probably more than going to the movies and seeing something, because at least on television, stuff gets spread out. It gets explained. You have time to play with it. You have time to dabble with it. Whereas movies, you're kind of locked into a 90-minute or 120-minute runtime, and it really does force you to kind of really push out this content in a way that maybe doesn't necessarily connect with the audience. Now, in, let's say, regards to Ghostbusters, that had nothing to do with the runtime of the movie. It was just a really shit movie. But everything else, they just haven't had a good year. And I know people are wanting to see Sony go under. This, of course, coming off of the hack and how Amy Pascal is and the whole thing with Ghostbusters. But Sony still hires and employs a lot of people who aren't involved in any of that. And Hollywood is already a cutthroat industry as it is. So I personally don't want to see Sony sell. I don't want to see them go under. I think that they do try to produce some good stuff, but this year will be definitely a telling point. You got the Smurfs animated movie coming out. You've got Spider-Man, which is going to be a guaranteed moneymaker to the point of absolute profitability. And you've got a whole bunch of other things. So if Sony can refocus their vision, their direction, right? Now that Amy Pascal is no longer fucking things up, and everyone who was involved up until the Sony hack is basically gone, the only person now they have to get rid of is Tom Rothman, because Rothman is going to keep doubling down on stupidity. Look how he fucked up Fox, right? Like, again, go and check out Midnight's Edge, their video about Deadpool, and they will go through how Tom Rothman totally fucked up Fox. And it's a great video series too. But the point is that, like, I think this is a good time for Sony to really kind of look at what it takes to make good movies, look at what people are watching, bring in executives and studio heads that understand where the market is going. They need people out there that think like Wayne Gretzky, that are not trying to follow the puck, but are trying to look where the puck is going. And maybe, just maybe, if they stop trying to pander to a certain audience or treat people like shit, they might find themselves in a position where they start becoming profitable again. But then again, last year, even though it was a record-breaking year overall, only a few movies really kind of led the pack in that regard. And a lot of it was Disney properties. Disney, for some reason right now, is just, they got the right people in the right places, and that is really working for them, which is one of the reasons why I feel that with Marvel Studios handling the production of Spider-Man Homecoming and Sony then just getting all the money from that, then they're going to be okay. You know, because it's entirely possible that this Spider-Man could gross over $1 billion due to its connection with the MCU, the inclusion of Robert Downey Jr., and everything else it has going for it. It's entirely possible that that's what's going to happen. So I do hope Sony kind of rights the ship. You know, or if they really want to do well, just come hire me. I will totally make the movies that people out there want to see. I don't really know what those are right now, but I would definitely do my best. I'm huge on the found footage genre myself, so I do my best to avoid that. But look, it's been 10 years since Superbad, and honestly, we need those kind of smartly written comedies because we're not getting them as much. And that might be entirely due to the fact that they're trying to play to a wider audience. And as a result of playing to a wider audience, like let's say Independence Day Resurgence, even though I enjoyed the movie, it was still kind of dumb as shit. They still kind of put it to this whole thing where it's like the script was like dumbed down, the dialogue was dumbed down, and they're playing to this foreign audience because that at this point is where the money is. All right, guys, finally today, I want to talk about probably the biggest news of 2017 so far that happened when I was sick and I couldn't talk about it effectively. But as you guys can see from my shirt, Star Wars, baby, The Last fucking Jedi, Episode 8 title revealed. And this is one that I've been thinking a lot about. Like, what does it mean? Right? The Force Awakens, what did it mean? The Force Awakens, I think, had a lot to do with the fact that Rey was discovering her ability to use the Force. It awakened in her, something she didn't know that she had. Also with Kylo Ren becoming, more on the Sith side of things. So, him also awakening inside of him. And the fact there still hasn't been any Jedi since Luke, because in the opening scroll of The Force Awakens, it says that they didn't know where Luke Skywalker was, The Last Jedi. So based on that information, it does appear that the Last Jedi would be aimed at Luke Skywalker. But it's entirely possible that it could also be referring to Rey, right? And Luke taking on the role of Yoda in Empire Strikes Back and training Luke to become the last Jedi, essentially. And so it's just him kind of passing on the information. Although I really don't think after the death of Carrie Fisher that they're going to kill off Luke Skywalker. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Luke Skywalker is going to become the Obi-Wan Kenobi character who is going to then last a long time. I have a feeling at the end of episode 9, Luke is going to be off in some Jedi temple, raising a bunch of younglings and teaching them the way of the Force, while Daisy or not Daisy, but Rey and Finn, are off living their own life somewhere too, probably. I don't know. Well, Jedis can't love. Jedis can't marry. Jedis can't do all that. So all things considered, it's entirely possible that they won't, but who knows? But the thing is, though, I've been looking over Rian Johnson, the writer-director of this, and when I first heard about it, I was like, man, like Brick was a good movie, and fucking Looper had an interesting story, and everything else. And then I started thinking more about the plotline of Looper. And how the plotline of Looper was kind of like really convoluted and didn't make a lot of fucking sense. And then the plotline of Brick was interesting, but the dialogue was hard to follow. I mean, granted, that was the whole point. So I'm a little apprehensive about where things are going to go with episode 8 with him running the show. We won't see a trailer for a while because the movie is still in post-production and they're probably not going to release a trailer until, I want to say, April or May. If you want my honest opinion, probably they're going to have a trailer in front of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, or there would be a trailer in front of Pirates of the Caribbean 5. So I think like those are the two big Disney movies that are coming out in May, and I think that's going to be when things are. Possibly they won't even put one on there until the opening of Spider-Man. We don't know. We literally have no idea, but one will be coming definitely before summer, I think. At least a teaser, because they gave us the teaser for Force Awakens, March of 2015, I think? So we got a good look at it early on, so they're going to probably do that here. But ultimately, I'm very excited for this. I'm very excited. I love the hell out of Rogue One. I want to know what's going to happen next with the franchise. I want to know what's going to happen next with everything. But the title The Last Jedi is, I mean, granted, I think it's meant to be ominous at this point in time because we don't know what it means. So it's you know, after the death of Carrie Fisher, and also the death of Han Solo's character, I think, like, you know, people are like kind of wondering, are our heroes just going to be killed off? Because with Han Solo, he's already dead canon-wise. Carrie Fisher's dead, so she can't be in the next one. Mark Hamill's still alive and well. So Disney, this is your opportunity to not completely break all your fans' hearts and keep him around for a while longer. And I think because of the Obi-Wan connection to it and how, you know, they probably want to keep him around longer due to what's happened. Luke ain't gonna die. He's gonna survive everything. But I think I really do, you know. But then again, it might be, you know what it might be. Here's the thing. Here's what I think is happening. Okay, so in episode 9, there's supposed to be this big pivotal moment where Leia meets Kylo Ren, right? Leia meets Kylo Ren, and Leia has that big kind of like, you fucking killed your father thing, right? That's going to transfer over to Luke, because then it's going to be like, you killed one of my best friends. You killed your father. I'm your uncle. You betrayed me and killed younglings in the Jedi Temple. That pivotal moment is going to transfer over to him, which means they ain't going to kill him off in fucking episode 8. In episode 9, it's possible he could die, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. All right, guys, that wraps up this episode of $3 Theater. Thank you for hanging out with me while we go through some of the movie news from the past couple weeks, because I just haven't done the episodes. But there will be more coming all the time. More stuff's happening. This is now, this series is now my channel's primary focus. You will see more of this than you will see a lot of other content, because I just want to talk movies. That will make me a much more happier person, as well as a much more well-rounded person. And I've got to force myself to do it. So you guys are going to see a lot more of it. So please, if you come across news stories from movies, hit me up, mundanemat.com/submit. Send it to me on Twitter or on Facebook or wherever, because I definitely want to know what's going on, because I definitely want to talk about it. Please also thumbs up the video, comment below on your thoughts on anything from today. And then also, if you're new, subscribe and check back daily for content from me. I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day. Peace out.